Yeah. Okay, so this is Emerge by Elza Malouf. And so this is going to be just a book summary of Emerge. So let's go ahead and get started. So who is Elza Malouf? Well, she started studying ways of thought when her high school sweetheart died in the Lebanese Civil War. Yes, he fought. Her high school sweetheart fought in it. And so she began questioning religion as an ultimate good, and then she started questioning the politics that led to war. She became a lawyer, and she had her parents' support with her career. While in law school, she joined the secular resistance to Israel and even the Socialist Ba'ath Party. But after a while, she realized that foreign ideologies would not change her home country. So a system had to be created organically within the Middle East to transform it. And from all this study, she found about Ken Wilber. And this was when Ken Wilber and Don Beck were still partners. And then from there, she learned about Don Beck and began working with him. And as a fun fact, she's also a practitioner of non-dual meditation. Okay, so what is spiral dynamics? It's an ego development theory. And in this theory, we believe that there are certain hardwired stages in people. And as you progress, you'll go through these stages without skipping them and without skipping them. So these stages progress from express self to sacrifice self. And each stage we refer to as a meme, which is a unit of cultural development. These people already have these memes in them, and they're brought online by life conditions.
So they exist in someone before they've reached that meme?
Yes, so they're all the memes are in you right now.
All of them are available at any given moment.
Yeah, but they come online with your life conditions as you grow.
And they don't all necessarily come online in your lifetime.
No, that's exactly. They don't all come online in your lifetime either. A person's they don't. And your life conditions can advance, or your meme, you can advance in your meme, and you can regress, and you can stay the same at any given point in time. So this is a biopsychosocial model. So it involves biology, psychology, and sociology. And people have characteristics in all the memes from the most advanced to the most lowest. But they have a center of gravity in one. Most of their life is consumed in one value meme. And each value meme has a healthy and an unhealthy expression. When a person's in a value meme, they can be open to going to the next value meme. They can be arrested, as in there's some barrier that keeps them moving to the next value meme. And they can also be closed, where they're unwilling to go to the next value meme. But they could if they wanted to.
Let me ask you this. When you leave one value meme and you enter the next, does it tend to be you're on the sort of positive side as you enter it? Because you're just discovering it and then you get locked in? Is that a tendency?
So there's the first part of the stage is always going to be a rebellion against the last stage. Right. So more than likely that's going to come out unhealthily because you're just fighting against what was before. But as you progress in the meme and grow, the next meme starting to come online a little bit. So you're able to express the meme that you have now in a more conscious way, a more social way. I'm referring, instead of good and bad, I'm referring to it as social and antisocial because it helps you to build community or hurts you in building community. Each meme transcends, but it includes the previous memes. So someone that's in a rational phase has the traditional still in them. And as you ascend up the spiral, the memes increase in complexity and what you can incorporate and what you can't incorporate. So, how does SD apply to the Middle East? Well, to begin, we understand the Middle East as having chiefly tribal values. And progress can't begin until you recognize this. The value systems of the West took hundreds of years to build, so you can't just impose them artificially onto the Middle East. So currently NGOs and international coalitions focus on how to better spend oil revenue, which isn't helping anybody, and they're not actually oil revenue. And if the oil dries up, they could be isolated and ignored. So the first countries to move forward were the ones that lost their oil revenue early and ran out of oil, like UAE and places like that. So that's when the ascensions naturally start occurring. So citizens in the Middle East don't see their government as strong. So when they need infrastructure, protection, they look to their tribal leaders. And because their central government isn't strong, their tribal leaders gain more and more importance. And that leaves the society more divided, because everybody's looking for their tribal leader and their faction to win out. So to move forward, you have to strengthen these central governments, because that's the only mechanism we have to put people in situations where they're having to work with people of other ideologies and other tribes. So spiral dynamics provides the optimal framework, because it starts at a position, understanding the positions and their current value stages, and that these stages that they're exhibiting aren't inherent to the people. They can choose to move forward or choose to move backwards.
Let me ask you this. If someone is in a tribal stage, clan-like stage, can they even get that what spiral dynamics is trying to explain?
That's the thing. It'd be hard to do that.
That's what I'm thinking.
So again,
You might get it at Orange, maybe.
Maybe at Orange. Well, that's another reason why you need the central government. That way, ideally, they're going to be recruiting the most talented people, which would be Orange and above.
Right.
And then you're going to have those people kind of leading the charge.
Okay.
So there's a couple of terminologies that's unique to this book. The first is a meme, which I've already explained is a unit of cultural data. And we referred to the stages as memes as shorthand also. Integral design architects are people that are experts in integral theory and spiral dynamics. And they're coming in as consultants to help these cultures grow.
They are?
Yes.
Wow, cool.
And so indigenous intelligence experts are people local to the area, and they help the architects to put their knowledge in a format that people there can understand and work with the people there. And then superordinate goals are goals that people have that are more important than their tribe or their small area. There's stuff the whole nation can get behind and fight for. Like in America, we had the space race. And so in the 60s, we said we're going to put a man in the moon in 2 years. And so that was such a big, important goal that it transcended whatever small fights me and you might have had here.
It was 2.
In 2?
He said in 10.
10.
End of the decade is what Kennedy said.
So Elza Malouf found that there's a couple commonalities in all these Arab dictators. The first is they see the root of the problem as Israel and Western imperialism. After they do that, they can blame everything ill in the country on Western imperialism. They can come in then and install martial law to prevent dissent. And once they can prevent dissent, they control the education, the press, and media. And after that's done, they can assimilate the military and the wealthy class. So they don't have anybody dissenting, and they have complete control at that point. Now that's really just a red meme way to take control of a government right there. But
Well, it's like creating an enemy. Sounds familiar
Yeah.
with who we've got in office at this moment.
yeah,
That's like Trump.
yeah. All right. Oh, you Kit?
Well, I'm just curious as to a sense of, I know that Israel is central to be able to have control, to manifesto. Do you think it's still true that most of them actually view Israel as the main problem?
I see.
Because the reason I'm asking is because there's a lot of that we don't hear about, actually, with Middle Eastern countries
Qatar and
working
UAE,
behind
yeah.
the scenes, working together and with Israel more than they would ever publicly in any way say. And they also know that Israel is the like the technological cutting edge of their so many things. So I'm curious if it's a shift in whether they actually think this, or that they just must have that in order to maintain power in a lot of ways.
Well, I mean,
It's only a mix,
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the red meme, you don't take personal responsibility. The whole point of it is to blame everything wrong on the other party. So that helps them to keep control. And, if the people aren't at a high level of development themselves, I don't know how much you're going to be able to understand deep geopolitical
Right.
philosophy and things. So, see, I'm not from the Middle East. All I got is the book. So, I mean, I don't know anything but beyond the book. So,
Yeah.
so these are the stages of government per spiral dynamics. So the first stage of government is beige, and that's survival bands. So in here, you're trying to take care of your physiological needs, your temporary physiological needs, food, sex, hunger, sleep, and is food, sex, hunger, sleep. And so what you do here is you get small bands of maybe 5 or 6 people, and you work together to achieve those needs as they arise. And so the knowledge base you're using in this stage is just your instincts. You're not having anything passed down or anything yet. So you're just using your instincts with 5 or 6 people to get your momentary needs. And once life stabilizes at that level, you move on to purple, which is the next stage. That's the stage of the tribe. So the survival band was able to stay together and stay healthy long enough to have more than one generation in it. So now that they got more than one generation in it, they can start putting online new types of knowledge. So this is when cause and effect starts coming up, but people aren't that good at it yet. And that's where the superstition comes in. So through the superstition, you'll have gods and spirits. Now, since the older people in the group have the most knowledge in the rituals that control the gods and spirits, they are the ones that are exalted. And so in this stage, you build your first and strongest family bonds, and your ownership is communal.
Is that where ancestor worship starts?
That is ancestor worship in nature. And so when you're dealing with people in the purple meme, many outsiders can't understand these strong family bonds. However, the people in the tribe can't understand how outsiders don't have these bonds and how they function without them. So there's a huge misunderstanding there, and that's what keeps the tribe so isolated.
Wait, so I mean when they come up against other people?
Yes, people
Okay.
out at higher levels of development, yes.
Who don't see family bonds as particularly necessary?
Yeah, and as important as they are
Oh,
in the tribal scenario. A lot of things happen different in tribes.
Right.
Like women have more power in tribes a lot of times because there's certain rituals only women can perform. So like in the Iroquois, the women actually pick the chief. So the next stage comes online is dictatorships, because once you have these strong family bonds,
It's red.
yes, in red dictatorships. So you have these strong family bonds, and life is stabilized even more. So now you can go back to express self, where you were at sacrifice self in purple. So once you're in express self, you want to get your own wants, because you move past needs at this point, and you're getting it through domination and coercion. So in this meme, might makes right, and you have a feudal government structure. So the dictator wants people in power to be close to him, so he'll often have his family. And the way the structure is set up, the small bosses are in charge of the people, and then there's big bosses in charge of them. And it goes up all the way in a feudal manner to the king or the dictator. So in dictatorships, minorities are oppressed physically, all resistance is beaten down, compromise is seen as a weakness, which makes the dictator even more, it makes it even more difficult for a dictator to work with the rest of the world. And that's what keeps these dictators even more isolated.
Compromise makes them look weak.
Exactly. I don't know where I've heard that before. So most of Elsa Malouf's work is the transition between red to the next stage, which is blue.
So that's what she's working on.
That's what she's
What
working
country
on.
is she in?
She was in Palestine before her and Don Beck came back to America a couple years back. So blue dictatorships is authoritarian democracies. So the examples of these would be China and Eastern Europe. And so you have centrally planned governments at this stage. In America, it would be analogous to the times we built, like the Hoover Dam or the Transcontinental Railroad. Both those projects were heavily government funded and heavily government subsidized and supervised. So in this meme, you have strong organizations. And everybody's really subordinate to the organization and the plan. And so this is when you start having your leader somewhat hamstrung, because he can't just do anything he wants. There's things to keep him in check. That's when it starts coming online here. So in your own life, you might see this kind of organization in churches. So the pastor will make decisions, it'll go to a deacon board, and then once you have a plan, the members of the church will act it out. So the essential facet of blue meme government is business regulation. So institutions like we have now, like Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Stock Exchange Commission, these are strong government organizations that help to reduce fraud to protect us. At the same time, they do hamstring the businesses so they don't make as much profit, because they're trying to keep the business as stable as possible. So the blue meme is extremely important in modern society. Now, orange is the multi-party democracy. So this is the US, Canada, and the UK. And in these memes,
excuse me. So for the authoritarian democracy, you mean it's still a democracy where people are okay, I don't understand how, when you called orange and you talked about that having parties.
Okay, so in
in blue.
Yes, okay. So when they were talking about it in the book, they were really talking about China being the perfect example of authoritarian democracy. So there are more than one party in China. But the way they set the system up, the officials elect the next highest stage. So by the time you get to the top, you know who's going to be at the top.
Oh, okay. So it's one party, but it's democratic within the party.
Yes.
They're voting within the party.
They're voting within the party. And even in after the Civil War in America, I mean, we really had the Republicans running everything. So, I mean, it was very much a one-party heavy system here in America. So, yes, you had some orange online, but it was mainly blue. And we knew what we were going to do. Like, we kind of knew who the next president would be and everything like that. So, it was all the next 6 presidents after Lincoln were all at his second inauguration. Taft, Grant, all of them. All the next 6 were at that one spot. So.
Okay, so in the authoritarian democracy, the vote or election of the leader is among party officials.
Yeah, yeah.
And those party officials are not necessarily elected by the people.
No, they're elected by the officials under them.
Okay, yes.
It's interesting. My father, being well-educated but a Southerner, said that Lincoln had sent some troops down to the South to shut down newspapers.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Before the war.
Yeah, it made sense. So multi-party democracy is the US, UK, and Canada now. And these democracies are focused on people increasing their personal net worth. So you start to break down some of those blue meme structures to build growth again. And so, of course, you're going to think about Reaganomics at this time.
And this is an externally oriented.
Yes, this is this is an express self meme. And so you start opening up loopholes to allow these businesses to start making money again and allow people to grow their net worth. So progress in this meme is measured by material gain, so the stock market, things like that. Whereas before, there were projects, government projects that were being built, and the building of the Hoover Dam was the great national treasure, and the building of this TVA was a national treasure. But this one is about the stock market and building up these private businesses. So the great thing about an orange meme democracy is that orders can come from the top down, but there also is a feedback loop from the bottom back up. So people at the bottom can actually make decisions on the ground and give feedback to the people above them on how they can do better next time. So it's more of a feedback loop and a lot more egalitarian than the green meme.
Well, it's results oriented, and the results are pretty stark. Either you're making money or you're not.
Another thing about this meme is I say it's detrimental to environments and minorities. And what I mean by that is there's nothing inherent in the orange meme to protect people or the environment. So people are protected by what's left of the blue meme structures like the FDIC, Stock Exchange Commission. And the other part that hems these businesses is a green meme, which is going to be the next one, customer base that would stop shopping there if they do something too bad. Like Starbucks has free trade coffee, but they have it because their customer base would stop shopping there if they didn't. It's not because they necessarily think it's the right thing to do. So that's the thing about the orange meme. There's nothing in it inherently to protect people.
Well, it's interesting because, China obviously, at least for a long time, didn't give a crap about the environment. Yeah. But they didn't exactly. So part of the culture is moving orange.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they're having to rein that in because the red blue meme, I guess you're calling it, who's in control, saying we got a problem.
Exactly.
Well, they're able to be much more efficient about it when you.
Central planet.
Yeah. Or move everyone who lives in a place we don't want you moving. Let me end on this. So the U.S. kind of went more from blue to orange when the president became, the vice president, elected by citizen balloting rather than by the Senate or House.
Okay. So before the
The Constitution originally.
okay.
I don't think originally.
They proposed that the Senate would elect
The original Constitution, the Senate would actually elect the president and the vice president. It wasn't put out to.
But that happened in this last election with the electoral college, which is really 2 senators per state, regardless of population. Actually outranked the popular vote.
The electoral college is each state has a certain number.
Two per
The
state.
electoral college
regardless of
it's
size.
based on
That's
population.
true for the
No.
number of senators.
Yeah,
But not the electoral
not the
college.
electoral college. But it's the equivalent of the Senate actually electing the president this time.
And it's also happened before.
Yeah.
This brings up one of my lifelong complaints, which is having been born and raised in D.C., which has a population more than a couple of states, we've got zero representation
Right.
at all.
Thank you.
One non-voting member in Congress.
Okay, so green is the social democracy. And we see this in Northern Europe. It's based off communal values. So in these communal systems, the goal is to more better society and build a safety net for everybody than it is just to get individuals rich. So again, we're going back from the express self to sacrifice self. And so these societies are searching for the deeper meaning, and they want to forge a new community that transcends the old boundaries of religion, race, and national identifiers.
Well, they're looking at the well-being of the whole community.
Yeah,
Just the rest of it.
women's rights becomes essential again, and everybody receiving equal pay. Now, on the macroscopic scale, green meme democracy exists in Northern Europe. Their democracy provides an extensive social safety net, and minority rights are in the forefront. Often the political conversation centers on how we can include the disenfranchised. So
This is internally oriented.
yes, internally oriented. So one things I saw green meme in America when I wrote this was that the Boy Scouts changed their name to just the Scouts because they had a few female members and they didn't want anybody to feel disenfranchised.
And they changed allowing scoutmasters to be gay.
Yeah, they did. They let scoutmasters to be gay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
So in these organizations, this is going back to your microscopic organizations like your city organizations, church organizations that are green meme. Because some churches are green and some churches are orange or blue. Yeah. I mean, Creflo Dollar would be orange, but we don't want to go into that. So the decisions are made communally with all the stakeholders having a say. So decisions are made very inefficiently. A lot of time is wasted, but luckily the green meme a lot of times has a lot of money built up from the orange and blue phase that they can still make it through all this inefficiency. So another example of the green meme would be the ideal of the United Nations. Now in practice, I don't know if it's green meme, but ideally it would be green. It was green with the gray, yeah. So now here's the goal, and that's the second tier governance. So the second tier government, this is the leading edge of most Western governments. And then systems thinking rules all these decisions. So leading edge of Western governments and the work of Malouf in the Middle East represents the orange meme. Only 10% of today's governments are in the meme. Integral design architects first study the problem using their analysis methods, and then indigenous intelligence experts create ways to practically apply the techniques in culture as they currently exist. The integral process does not dictate to people halfway across the world how to implement programs that don't work. Instead, it facilitates growth within that region of the world that brings the solutions naturally online.
Let me ask you this. Is the recognition of the work outside the group, once the problems are defined, are the problems recognized by green in the green meme, and then the yellow addresses them, or are the yellow the ones that recognize the problems? Because it seems like green identifies lots of problems. They have maybe a singular type of way to approach the problem. But so my question is yellow seeing the problems that green already sees, or is it seeing the solutions as different?
Well, yes, it's going to see the solutions as different because it's expressed. And well, the way I understand the yellow meme functioning is it sits back and sees the problems brought up by each meme.
And green.
Green, and then once he sees all the problems brought up by all of them, he comes up with the solutions that integrates all those synergies together. So it's not ideological, but it's principled. And some examples of this in the real world in the book was Brad Pitt's Make It Right Foundation, which hired industry experts to design homes for New Orleans that are cheap, flood resistant, and energy efficient. Another was Make It Right Foundation. The other is Doctors Without Borders, and the organization gets doctors from all over the world to go into third world areas. So turquoise is holonic thinking. So this goes back to the Jan Smuts presentation I did, where you've integrated all the bio, psychological, and social together, and you're seeing things in holistic chunks instead of just attacking a problem here and attacking a problem there.
So I want to go back for a second, because yellow is externally oriented?
Yes, and then turquoise is, again, internally oriented, or sacrifice self. And so
what is yellow doing it for, then? If they're externally oriented, are they doing it for the well-being of them in the environment?
The survival of the species, because yellow is the higher version of beige.
Okay.
So you go back to survival mode.
Okay, so it's a survival on a grander scale.
Yeah, it's the survival of mankind and not of man.
Okay, so you're going to tell me what the difference between yellow and turquoise is?
Yes, because turquoise is purple on a grander scale.
Oh, right. That's why he uses the letters.
Yeah, so this is purple on the grander scale. So instead of having elders, you actually look for those grand experts. And once you look for the real experts, those real knowledgeable people, that is when you start solving the problems from that perspective. And you're not seeing things as individual entities anymore. You're seeing it as holistic chunks. So you see the social component of a problem, psychological component, and the biological component. And so you see the world as consisting of as one large hold-on consisting of smaller hold-ons. And each hold-on is a component and a whole in and of itself. So the world of feelings and data are all already integrated. So you're not just looking at number crunching to get it done, but you also understand the feel of what would resonate with people and what would not. So you're looking at things empirically and theoretically. So this won't really come online until you have a lot of yellow meme thinkers in control. So you have a long way to go to this.
And they have to graduate out of yellow.
And they have to graduate out of yellow, and that's because that's how you get your that's how you get turquoise going.
That's going to take a while because they have to get in, see the problems of yellow, and then extract themselves from that. Right?
But they're working on building global commons. So a global common is different than a free market. So this is an area where you get a group of people together, they collect the resources and can split them up in a more egalitarian manner.
Where are they? When did they start? The yellow functional democracies are thinking global commons?
Yes. No. Turquoise is global commons. And the global commons stuff in the book, I didn't understand all of it. It was very vague because there's so little of it online yet.
That makes sense. Not a lot of evidence for it yet.
Yeah, so the memes are not, this meme has little emergence yet because we haven't solved enough of the first tier problems. Once we get them solved, this will start coming online more often.
I'd be happy if yellow got in charge.
Yeah. And so when this meme comes online, consciousness in the noosphere is awakened. Now, Ken Wilber talks about the noosphere a lot, but that's the realm of collective thought.
That's
It's-
Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's idea.
Yeah, so instead of spirit, you got noosphere now.
Right.
So that's what's replacing spirit. And then, so since little the world operates at this meme yet, little of it's manifested, and we don't know a lot about it yet. So we're still learning about turquoise. So in conclusion, all governance systems have life cycles. So you'll have a dictator for a little while, and after a while, that won't work anymore. And then you'll have naturally come on the authoritarian democracy. And then naturally, after a while, the multi-party democracy will come on. So these are going to come on completely naturally because they're already hardwired into people.
And they fall back because look what's happening in Brazil.
Yeah.
I mean, look what's happening in a lot of places.
The analysts must be realistic about the development of the population as it is now. And also, foreign imported systems won't work just by themselves. You can't just import socialism from the Nordic countries into Syria or into Argentina. You have to build something naturally that comes up from there. So we got any more questions? Any more discussion?
So are you going to talk about this more in terms of its application specifically in the Middle East or Palestine?
See, I don't know enough about the Middle East to really speak a lot on it. In the book, she talks a lot about Erdogan and...
Must be a new book.
Yeah, it's like 10 years old. But a lot of stuff I heard about
He's been in
Erdogan...
charge that long.
Well,
He
yeah.
had been coming up, but he was not in charge in 10 years, I don't think.
Yeah, one thing I didn't like about the book was it tried to say that, the Middle East is centered in tribal. But, I mean, knowing history, science really came out of the Middle East. Like the first science and rationality was algebra, and the algebra comes out of the Middle East.
That's algebra.
Algebra.
Because it's Arab.
Yeah, it's Arab. Same with chemistry. Like the first chemists were the perfumers in Arabia. So their techniques on chemistry and medicine grew out of the Middle East.
In fact, it was the Arabs who rediscovered the writing of the Greeks and the Romans and brought it into their domain. And because I saw a video on this once, and the people from Europe and like France and England and stuff who would go down to southern Spain where the Arab Empire had gone, for the winter, kept taking the stuff back. You got to see what they're doing down there. You got to see what they're doing down there. They were bringing all that stuff north.
Well, it could be also that there'd be times in history where, where maybe all this flowering and flourishing was happening was in pretty isolated places, and most people were very rural and much more isolated in a different way, and so they were living in very tribal ways and everything like that, and just maybe in certain main cities that had the universities and things like that, was that going on, and it really, its scope wasn't that far beyond.
Well, I just finished watching this great courses thing on the history of the Western world, and there was only a handful of massive empires. The Persian Empire was one of them. The rest of the time, there was all these little city-states. They were fighting all the time. I had no idea how many little countries there were, and little cabals. And Italy was split up into like 5 or 6 different.
Same with Germany.
It was absolutely a mess. Yeah, absolutely.
And the Arabs also liked poetry.
They did. That was my father's specialty, Arab poetry. He taught Arab theology and Syriac theology. Pardon?
Courtney Love poems of the troubadours.
It sounds like Courtney Love. It sounds funny.
Courtney Love too.
Maybe that's how she chose her name. Oh, Courtney Love.
So one of the things they talked about in the book, they had a hard time because it originally was integral design engineers. And as soon as they said the word engineers, people out there were talking about social engineering and eugenics. Because, that's how the eugenics used to talk about themselves, so no one would even listen to them. And so one thing I thought when I was reading the book was that one of the biggest problems was that they didn't take a good, thorough look at all of Arab culture. So if I come to you and say, your culture is centered in purple, you're immediately going to turn me off. Because you're like, oh, he thinks his culture is 100 times better than mine. So if they had come at it from the standpoint of, this is the part of your culture that's in purple, this part is in red, this part is in blue, this part is in orange, this part is in green. So when I come to you like that, you're like, okay, so there's people that's like me already in green. So if I were to change and try to aspire to green, I'm not leaving who I am and changing who I am. I'm being like other people within my culture because I don't want to leave my culture. So the book kind of towed that line the whole time. So at one point they're trying to make the case of you have to build something within Arabia that's better. But at the same time they're saying, oh, well, all y'all got now is purple, so it's going to be about 2,000 years for y'all get up to where we're at now. And I just don't think that's even correct. I mean, there's a lot of America that's purple. I mean, if you go back home, how we treat elders is totally different than how it is up here, and that's a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of orange meme in Arabia. All our sciences go back to Arabia. So, to jump up and say, if it wasn't for Arabia, there'd still be the Dark Ages in Europe. So, you gotta, so if I came at you like that, that's a whole different conversation.
It seems to me that if you have a government that is got a lot of memes in it, that makes it that much more difficult to manage.
Yeah.
If you got a lot of each one of those memes, it takes a lot of thinking to sort of organize them and get them each what they want.
But I think you're not going to be able to bring this to people until you fully understand the people you're bringing it to. One thing that got me during the conference I went to with Don Beck, there's a guy there who his presentation was anti-immigration. So his premise was that Europe doesn't want to bring in a lot of people from the Middle East and the Caribbean because they naturally are at a red and blue, purple stage of development. So when they come to Europe, they're going to bring their problems with them. But a true integral perspective, in my opinion, would understand that the way they are now is by their life conditions. So if they were exposed to a different set of life conditions, they could automatically change by going to Europe. If you're in a situation where you could be killed and your family be sold into slavery, you're going to be more aggressive. So if you move to an area where you don't have to worry about that, you're going to naturally calm down and be less aggressive. So moving to Europe in and of itself could create the life conditions to move those people up. And spiral dynamics teaches us how to engineer life conditions to allow the greatest number of people to come up. And it bothered me because the conference was set up by Saeed Al-Bawani, who is Elza Malouf's husband. And I was wondering, why would he let this man get up here and talk like this without any rebuttal? And it just kind of bothered me, you know? And that was like kind of a low point for me in the conference. That really bothered me. And there was another presentation where a guy was railing against political correctness. I just got up and walked out of that one because I don't even want to hear that. I mean, everybody, there's a certain level. Yeah, exactly. Because there's all kinds of stuff I want to say at work that I don't say.
So, Randy, I'm confused because you said that, when you said he was railing against political correctness, and you didn't want to hear it, and then you said, because they're at work, there's all these things you want to say that you don't say. So I guess I thought if someone's railing against political
correctness, you think that if you take away political correctness, I can say what I want to say. But like what he was talking about was stuff like, if you tell a joke that's sexist, everybody will get you fired and stuff like that. I was like, come on, man, we don't need to do that no more. We just need to move past that. We don't need to have a big convo on this, And he just kind of seemed like a smug guy who wanted to tell brash jokes in public and not have any consequences for it. Like I was talking to this guy at work, right? See, I don't watch UFC, but Conor McGregor fought a guy named Khabib. I can't pronounce his last name, but the guy he fought was a Chechnyan Muslim. And so one thing about fighting boxing and he lost. So they try to turn it into all of one group. Yeah. And so Conor McGregor at the pre-fight weigh-in offered Khabib a drink, and he turned it down, and he called him a backwards C word at the pre-fight weigh-in. So
Wait, is this fake fighting?
No, this is UFC is real.
This is like the real deal.
And so then everybody buys the pay-per-view because it's a white guy beating up on a Muslim guy. Or you're going to buy it because you want to see a Muslim guy beat the crap out of a racist white person. So it's not even about the fighting at this point. It's just, I just want to see somebody racist get their butt whooped. So of course it was one of the second or third highest rated UFCs there was. Everybody bought this, right? So Khabib beat the holy crap out of Conor McGregor. Like Conor McGregor almost passed out in the ring. So and I loved about Khabib because I love Khabib because Khabib was like, I'm not scared of McGregor. He's a tap machine. So because people usually try to strike him, he grappled. But so Khabib has him in a headlock and he's choking out. And so at the last minute, Conor finally taps out. So Conor's cornerman yelled a racist slur at Khabib. And so Khabib hopped out of the octagon over the fence and started beating the crap out of the cornerman. And then Khabib's cornerman came in and started beating up Conor McGregor when he was on the ground. And so, of course, they suspend Khabib. And, of course, they could suspend Khabib. And I'm just like, we got to get past, like, the people in charge of UFC could be like, you can come to a pre-fight weigh-in and insult that man without immediately going to his religion. So if you want to start up a thing, you can insult that person as an individual, and that still stirs up a bunch of controversy, and people will still buy it. But once you turn it into his whole religion, and he's made fun of his father. He called his father a terrorist or something in another interview. Of course you're going to get emotions high. And then because you've put all this racism out there, of course one guy is going to say something off kilter. So the Conor's cornerman yelled that slur out right after Conor tapped. So Khabib was like at 100% adrenaline rise, right? Because he just won a fight. He just choked a man out. So, like, I love how they're saying, well, Khabib should have more restraint. You just paid him to choke a man out. But he should be restrained now? You don't pay a guy to choke a man to death and be like, oh, we should have more restraint and, be more civil. Like, this isn't a debate. Like, you pay these people to choke each other out. And then you yell a slur at him, of course he's going to try to kill you. And it was so funny because Khabib jumped over the fence in like one leap. He just jumped up, hop over, and just he jumped into the stands and beat the shit out of the corner man.
I heard there was some rhubarb afterwards, but I didn't really get it.
Yeah, and so that's what happened. And so, like, we got to really be careful about, like, even in, like, UFC, how we present ourselves and how we do stuff, you know? And I just didn't... And at the Spiral Dynamic Conference, it kind of bothered me they had even a presentation like that. And it bothered me that, you know, Saeed was in charge of it and he didn't see that too, you know? And, you know, I kind of sat with that by myself.
We try so hard to allow voice to all sides that we lose our ground in terms of what's a valid conversation.
The question is, where's the place where you can do that?
That was a question I have, because when you brought up talking about the concerns about bringing, I guess, red or purple to a green society or blue, and people not wanting them because they're going to bring purple to that society, and then also about the political correctness. I was thinking of hearing someone talk who was in Germany, I think it was in Germany, yeah, and that there actually was a night where there were a lot of problems, or maybe it was in Scandinavia, where there were a lot of problems with they were Muslim men who had come, and on a particular night, there being a problem with sexual assaults more, because I guess in the Western society, people were acting like really pretty loose and maybe not, you know, in terms of their culture. In terms of their culture, even they were, well, but even in terms of their own culture, you know, it'd be like, let's say you went to Mardi Gras, or, you know, or something like that, where, you know, it gets, you could say it's one word you could apply, I think, to much of it is it gets out of control, even among the residents, what's happening there. Yeah.
And you can even use terms like debauchery.
Exactly, debauchery. So there's like debauchery, and there, it wasn't as much as Mardi Gras, but there was maybe looseness, and so the Muslim men, evidently that night, the police arrested many because of sexual assault. That in the Western culture there was debauchery, but it didn't include, people weren't sexually assaulting, you know, their fellow countrymen. And so I think what happens, maybe people feel, oh, when something like that happens,
if anything goes, then this goes too.
Right, but they also feel when that happened, then, but told you weren't even ever allowed to express concerns about when people came from a certain culture that there could be problems, and you're not even allowed to talk about that in that green culture. And so then people started to, that's not good when you can't talk about something and say, well, look, this night this happened, and that's of concern, and the reason it happened in terms of sexual assault was these, you know, clashing or of two
misunderstanding
different
of
cultures,
what are the expectations
and what are the
in each.
Yes, and what are the expectations? But if you're but political activists, you're not even allowed to say that can be a problem that can happen. Then I think that can push some people more to be more reactive to immigrants or people coming in. If you're not even allowed to, when something happens, to say, this happened, and how do we address it, or how do we help acculturate people more to come in?
Well, that's not what the presentation was. This guy was just saying that he doesn't believe that non-white immigrants should be moving to England. That's what he was about. He wasn't about, I mean, he didn't say it that blatant, but I mean, he wasn't about, okay, well, so when you come to England, we'll have this XYZ class for you to understand our culture. And, you know, if we see you out in the red light district or whatever party Mardi Gras equivalent they have in England. We're going to have heightened security there, so nobody does that, and we're also going to inform the immigrant community of what's going on and what the consequences are. Like, that's integral discussion. Like, that's not what he was having. He was just saying that we should just we should limit the amount of people we have from these countries. Like, he had this story about a friend of his who was Chinese. Conservatives love anecdotal evidence. They never have large-scale evidence, but
they're not big on the truth of institutional discrimination or problems or all those.
So it supposedly he had a friend in high school who was Chinese, and his friend told him this story about how he would never feel assimilated into England. And from there, he was just like, see, we shouldn't have Chinese people in England. Just like, right. So like your one friend in high school when he was 18 years old said he never wanted to assimilate.
But that's true that's true for writers in New York, that they're coming from the Midwest and the South, and they don't want to assimilate. They want to be in New York, but they want to carry their culture with them. It's not unique to national heritage. It's true for anybody who's a displaced person.
And a true integral person already sees all that. And that's what bothered me about that presentation. But I sat through it because I'm like, I shouldn't be so closed-minded. I should at least hear this man out. So.
Well, did you feel you could ask him, well, your premise is this, and how does that fit into this integral framework that we've been discussing?
I didn't really go that far into it. I was kind of. So me and another guy. So it was me there. There was a guy from Guyana. And, there wasn't that many minorities there to begin with. So it was just me and like two other guys. So me and him talked afterwards. We both were like, that was the dumbest presentation ever. Like, because the Guyanese guy's like, okay, you don't remember your country? Cool. Let me go somewhere, enslave everybody, take them back, get a whole bunch of money out of them, and then I won't go to your country. I won't bother you. let me go and take a bunch of slaves and start a plantation, and I'll be rich where I'm at, and I won't go nowhere. Like, it just... And it kind of bothered me that this is the integral conference, too. So this is it. So, I think if we don't really learn and really sit down and come up with ways to really interact with ethnicity, we're not going to be a big force. It's going to be a couple of rich old guys in Texas, talking about stuff. It's not going to be everybody. Yeah, because if we don't come up with the constructive ways to talk about ethnicity, we're going to have serious problems. I'm not for just a green meme where we just pretend everybody's the same and we just don't act. I'm not for that, but it's got to be better than this. Because what happens is what they're trying to do with it, I think what Don Beck really wanted to do with it was build an enlightened conservatism. Because when he was doing this was like in the 90s. So this is in the George W. days. And so if you read George W.'s book, his thing is a compassionate conservatism. So he's trying to rebuild conservatism in a better way. And I think Don Beck was trying to do that too. They're both from Texas. They're both, W's a little bit younger. But, that's kind of the feel I got from it. But, a lot of conservatism has just been proven wrong. They're trying to bring back stop and frisks now. They're trying to... And I'm like, well, the thing about it is that any study on stop and frisk shows that it doesn't work. It just makes people resent the police. Two, the supposed drop in crime from Giuliani's time period, there was a drop in crime all over the country, and it was because of life conditions. There was a boom in jobs at that time, so crime went down.
You don't need to steal as much when you have.
Yeah, if you have when you have a job, you don't sell drugs because you have a job. And so, and that's the thing about Spiral. Like, we already know it's the life conditions. So if we work on programs that improve the life conditions, you automatically advance people up the spiral. And that's the thing conservatism doesn't. Because one thing I hated in the book was, and I'm surprised that Elza Malouf didn't really stop him from doing that, was keep painting the Middle East as purple. Like, it's not purple. Like, the whole Middle East isn't purple. I've been there twice. I've been to Egypt and I've been to Egypt is the only time I've been. So I've been to China before. But you can't just label it all purple. Like, there was orange, there was green. And I think it's much more constructive to point out examples of all the memes in your culture and then you're like, okay, I'm read now, yeah, sure. But here's a Southern white lady that is, egalitarian. I can do that. That's something I can do. If you feel like the only egalitarians is Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton hates you and thinks you're like a country bumpkin, of course you're going to stay whatever the most regressive West Virginia person you can be. So I think that's something we really need to work on in Spiral.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. To take what you said about acknowledging the levels within a culture and that apply that to any subculture
Yeah.
as a more constructive way of working with them.
Yeah.
Well, I just started a 36 lecture set from the great courses on the history of conservatism. So it's very interesting because this guy, Edmund Burke, he didn't believe in democracy. He didn't think that was, he thought that inequality is natural.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some good ideas, and he had some ideas that Republicans wouldn't buy on now. So anyway, I got 34 more lectures to go. We'll see how we find out.
I'm going to have to buy that.
I just have to get their point of view. I want to know where they come from because I don't understand it.
Well, I mean,
I think also, well, that just went away.
I get the corollary of that because I talk with my dad 2 hours every night. We started at about 10 o'clock, from 10 to midnight. And he voted for Goldwater and continues to be avidly. And so I get my dose every night.
Well, I've told the story before, but I worked across the hall from a guy who was a Republican for 4 or 5 years. And for like 2.5 of those years, we would talk politics all the time. And finally, I just gave up. Because I really felt like I didn't know what the basis of his beliefs were, and I love him. He's an extraordinary human being. He really is.
Yeah.
I just don't get him. And that's the best thing I can say about him. I love the man, and I don't understand his political views.
Well, also they say that just giving people facts is not going, very often doesn't change people's beliefs. So you could,
Yeah, it's got to be.
I mean, because if you think, especially like let's say there's a feeling that African Americans maybe are, if there's tons of, and I'm making presumptions, but tons of subconscious racism or racial non-awareness, and all that subconscious, and then you're already working with presentation of facts or going through a certain filter that is going to preclude that.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have, so the little bit of study they have done, it's always been like maybe 4 or 5 people making the test up. I mean, you really need like a large panel of diverse people making the test. I would love to see, like, if I make a spiral dynamics test to test people's central meme and then put it out there, would I get a higher percentage of white people in the red meme than Don Beck would get? Because from my perspective of looking at it, I would see a lot of stuff that's red meme that's in mainstream white culture. So there'd be more people clicking on that, and you'd end up with more white people in the red meme on my test than you would in Don Beck's test. I mean, you got to take that cultural conditioning in there with it. And that doesn't mean that there aren't centers of gravity's difference between groups of people. It's just that we might not see we might be seeing a larger difference than what it is, because we have such a very small group of people. Like at that conference, it was 3 black men there, and it was like 150 people.
Yeah.
Like, that says a lot.
Yes.
Like, so.
It occurred to me just now that if we have the beige and the purple, we've all come up from there.
Mm-hmm.
So on some level, my group is more important than your group is in all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
It just manifests differently at different times.
Well, as long as you're in the first tier, you hold the viewpoint of we're right and they're wrong.
Right, right. My family's more important than my town. My town's more important than the state. My state's more important than the country, or however it goes. It's as your perspective expands, what you include as yours expands. But if you're threatened, I imagine it narrows down.
That's
Right.
that's the central thing I've been working around with the current political climate and looking at these. Once you start to worry, you go right back to base.
Right.
You know, can I survive?
Well, you
And
might
that-
stop at purple on the way.
and that fear means that that being turquoise is a very privileged place, that you have to be pretty fear-free to reach the point that you are trusting
That's
of
a very good point.
the universe, the other people, the dynamics, and I'm wondering if the current politics is causing, I know it is causing, a lot of people that I've always considered really as enlightened people as I know, and it's causing them great distress and fear, real fear about what's happening. And I'm thinking, is that going to push those of us who are more tolerant, more open, more willing to entertain multiple ideas? Is it going to push that back into a more dogmatic place?
It's
I
interesting.
know I'm becoming more dogmatic about, I just am unwilling to accept certain things that I used to would just pass over and go,
I
okay.
used to consider myself a moderate, but I'm not as moderate as I used to be. I'm just wondering, do the memes determine where your fears are?
Probably
Because
not.
If your identity is surrounded in red, then you're looking for things that are a threat to red. If your identity is green, then you're going to look things that are anti-green is what's going to irritate you.
Well, sometimes I think.
I don't know. I'm just
I
wondering.
wonder. I mean, I wonder what would I do if suddenly things got to a point, or where there was like war or armed conflict right here. You know, if I was just in that situation, and I don't know for sure how I would react if my world changed so dramatically. And we certainly see that happening around the world, and we see that happening to people who are, very educated, economically stable, probably open to different kinds of people, and you see that happening. That suddenly, look at Syria. The world is being completely shattered, and I think it's probably easy to go boom down to red or beige or whatever.
Well, there are points when you have to.
Yeah.
When you're in the concentration camp, you have to survive.
Mhm.
There's no, you
Right.
know.
If you decide you want to survive. Well,
To survive, but it's not gonna change your enlightenment. You leave because you're enlightened.
it's not going to
To
change.
change your enlightenment,
Mhm.
you just leave because you have to survive.
But there are people who can't get out.
You
is
can't
the
get
thing.
out. Or you
Is
don't
that
believe
in
it.
Syria right now
Yes.
that can't get away.
Or
they
Does
wind
that
up in
change
a-
who they fundamentally are, or they just have to stay quiet and try to survive?
Wow.
That's a good
The
point,
question
too.
is there someone who you fundamentally are?
That's
Yeah.
a good
No,
question.
there isn't.
That is a good
That
question.
is it. There definitely is.
There you go.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
There is
my
no who you
parents
really
left
are in
Cuba,
my view, anyway.
They didn't change. They just didn't want to be under a communist dictatorship,
right.
so they left. The other
And they
day,
also
somebody
were
posed
they
the
were
question-
welcome to come here.
Yes, somebody posed the question if there would be martial law midterms when Hillary haywire. Trump could impose martial law. I said, well, I got my passport. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me in Canada is illegal because my family already went through this.
But you know, when
This
you
is a real thing, but it's not going to change who I am,
Yeah.
right? That's the
I ask that question though all the time about if I had stayed
I don't
in
know.
my hometown, would I be who I am now? Is it the freedom to make different choices by being in a different social milieu, by not being in a 90% fundamentalist Christian environment? Is that,
Well, you
I
did,
had already
yeah.
moved
Have
pretty
you ever-
seriously away
We grow
from
and
that.
we
but-
evolve, the more we learn, and we're not resistant to learning. You know,
You're in an energetic space, and you're going to absorb the energy of whatever you're surrounding
That's a
yourself
good
with.
point too. That's a real good point.
I think that's part of how infants get enculturated. They're in an energetic environment of their parents and their family, so they're so down to it. Because when you said, what if there was violence in this area, the first thing that came to mind is, I'm protecting my family. That's what I'm going to do. I want to know where my kids are, and I want to know where my wife is, and my siblings. I would go out like that. And that's now, I would probably stop and think about it, but my first instantaneous reaction were the
Where are
kids.
the kids?
Right.
And would that guy from England be like, Justin Frank, he's red mean. Yes, I'm trying to protect his family, and he shot a whole bunch of people. I don't want him in England. He's some crazy person. That's the thing. You don't know the perspective of those other people. And just because your one friend in high school told you he didn't really want to be English, I mean, that's okay.
It makes it globally true.
Yeah, it makes it globally true. No Chinese people are wanting to become English. And why is it about becoming English or not redefining what English is? That's one thing I love about Baldwin, because Baldwin said, we're not trying to integrate into America. We're trying to build an integrated America. It's something that doesn't exist yet. So we don't want to just come in and be president of General Motors and cut all the pay to the workers for us to get rich. That doesn't fix anything if a black guy does that. We want to build an egalitarian America. And so that was the difference between what Baldwin was talking about and other people are talking about.
Well, culture is evolving, and if your identity is tied up in a certain niche of that culture and it's moving, you may want to lock it in. No, I am this.
Yeah, especially if it's really scary, or you feel like you'll be left completely behind as it evolves, and it's happening so fast now.
Right.
And
That's the thing. You're right. It's the
You know?
speed of the change.
yeah, and I wonder, and I see about the Supreme Court. I see about in terms of Gorsuch. I was thinking, is the pace of change so fast that the Supreme Court would be potentially the only remaining brake, to slow down the change so that you don't have dislocation.
But the people who are there are ones who were selected because they would make change. They
Yeah.
want to legislate from the bench right now.
No, I mean Gorsuch, meaning having a more conservative.
But the conservatives right now are not acting in a traditional conservator or conservatory
Right.
way.
Right, they're
They are
regressive.
acting as a
Regressive.
for partisan change.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what's going on.
They are not looking to conserve the status quo.
Right,
They
right.
are looking to open up the opportunity for competition and the suppression of those who might get in the way of that.
Yeah. If some stop and frisk comes in front of the Supreme
Oh,
Court,
man.
they'll okay it in a minute.
Well, they've okayed all the other.
Yeah.
They violated
Stop and
all
frisk.
of the other
Right.
integral.
I mean, if that's on a
Equity
national
versus-
level, I couldn't imagine if that gets on a national level. That's one of the things in D.C. is because we can get overruled by Congress so easy, whatever we want to do. So, we're in a really dangerous time. If we don't have people coming in who have a serious understanding of this, and we need less compromising people on the left. The left can't come in saying, well, conservatives really don't run everything, so we're going to try to get a little bit here and a little bit here. We need some conservatives that are like, no, this is what we're doing. You're not setting up stop and frisk. We're not going to compromise. Liberals, yeah. Yeah, liberals that are less compromising. But
To a degree.
yeah.
I mean, I consider myself progressive, but Bernie's too far out there for me. He is. I would not vote for him. Well, I don't know that.
What?
Depends on what the option was. Bernie.
Yeah.
All
Depends on who-
all
depends on what
those
the
old
alternative-
guys need
depends-
to retire and
depends
let
on what the
younger
alternative
people
is.
come and hatch all those old guys,
He's gone.
including
He's
Bernie.
retiring. Yeah.
They need to retire and let the next generation.
She,
A
it
whole
would have been so much
generation
more
has
fun
been
than being
skipped.
him.
Yeah, you're right. A whole generation has been
Been
skipped.
Yeah, a bit,
Right,
yeah.
because they've stayed too long.
Yeah. Yeah, they deprived the 40s.
Yeah.
It's interesting thing with this Kavanaugh thing that my sister called me a couple days ago and told me about when she was sexually assaulted when she was 18. I never knew that, and we have been close.
Yep.
What?
Yep, sounds,
My sister was sexually assaulted when she was 18. Never told anyone
that's not
until
uncommon
this past
at
week,
all. Yep.
which is amazing.
Well, I think it's especially amazing to men. It is not so, well,
Yeah,
I
it
would
is,
just say,
yeah.
it is not amazing to me that so many women didn't say anything at all. That is not amazing.
Well, if in my life no one has talked about it and I didn't witness it, I don't know what's happening.
No, I know, so that's why it's all very much
Yeah, yeah.
coming out much more now.
I wish people would not just make it about women though.
No.
What about all those boys and young men who were assaulted and harassed by the priests? This is about
Yeah.
people.
It's actually not just that. My sister's husband, who's dead now, he grew up in a neighborhood in Albany where the bathhouse was down the street. And he knew the men who were, and he had to fight his way out of the bathhouse sometimes. Now he would be probably 75 or 80 now.
Yeah, if we could make it about people and not just about women, it wouldn't get lost in the gender war.
Yes, it's definitely about,
Think of all
anyway.
those boys. I mean, that Pennsylvania report,
Right.
the other reports.
And they
coming
didn't
out.
report it either.
Think of those
interestingly
boys
enough.
and young men. Think of now we have powerful women bosses. It's going the other way. We have lots of gay situations where people
Right.
are getting assaulted. So why do we have to make it about just women?
I'm just curious as to when you think about all the men with the priests and stuff,
Yes, human trafficking involves
what
both
is it
genders,
about
right?
sexual assault that people don't want to report it?
Because you'll be looked at. Because you'll be looked at
Because
now.
they think nothing will be
believes you.
done. Yeah, people don't believe you and they think nothing will get done.
Or sometimes you
Because
invited
of the
it.
power differential
Yeah.
between the perpetrator and the victim. The victim in almost all ways is of a lesser power strata than the perpetrator,
True, good
socially
point,
and
yep.
societally. So if you speak up, the odds of you being, regardless of where that authority is derived from, whether it's being the boss or being the minister or the priest or the teacher, the authority is with the perpetrator, not with the victim.
There was an interesting article in the Post maybe a week or two ago about some woman who was raped by her best friend's boyfriend while her best friend was out of town. And now that it's come up, now he went right to his girlfriend when she got home and said it was consensual, and she broke off the relationship. But now what she was thinking about, she was explaining this in the Post and said, should I go tell the woman that he is married to now what he did? And basically she said, I decided not to. But those are some interesting quandaries, right?
Yeah. It's 8:30 now.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go.